The United States has announced an increased role for its Navy in the Pacific, while at the same time trying to reassure China that the region is big enough for both of them. At the annual Pacific Islands Forum, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said a coastguard program to combat illegal fishing would be expanded to include the American Navy. The first visit to the forum by a US Secretary of State was widely seen as an attempt to curb Beijing's growing influence in the region. Pacific correspondent Sean Dorney reports from the Cook Islands.
The US Secretary of State was given a truly Pacific welcome to the Cook Islands when she flew in late last week. Hillary Clinton arrived after the leaders of the 13 Pacific countries and Australia and New Zealand had met to consider a whole range of issues. There was one topic above all others that the Pacific leaders wanted to talk about.
I think what's fair to say is by far the topic that got the most debate amongst leaders was really this whole issue of fisheries and of the US treaty. That is the biggest resource that the Pacific countries have. It's where they feel there's greater opportunities and where both Australia and New Zealand can add some value. So that was really the one that dominated this year's forum.
The US treaty he referred to is an access treaty for the United States tuna fleet. Hillary Clinton had a separate meeting with the leaders over breakfast and then attended what is known as the post-forum dialogue. The Chinese delegation was led by Vice Minister Shui Tian-kai. In recent years, China has dramatically boosted its aid to the Pacific and given huge soft loans to Pacific countries for buildings and infrastructure. Was this unprecedented visit by the Secretary of State an attempt to counterbalance China?
Oh, no, it's not a counterweight, but we all see the same thing. This is a tremendously vibrant, productive region, and we're all investing in it. And so it makes good sense that China's doing that, we're doing it, and you see other nations, including Australia, doing the same thing, making big bets on the Asia-Pacific.
We are here in this region not to seek any particular influence, still less dominance. We are here to work with the island countries to achieve sustainable development.
The US and Chinese delegations sat at opposite ends of the table at the post-forum dialogue. The US Secretary of State said the region had not perhaps received the attention it deserved.
The 21st century will be America's Pacific century with an emphasis on Pacific. The Pacific half of Asia-Pacific doesn't always get as much attention as it should, but the United States knows that this region is strategically and economically vital and becoming more so.
It is China, though, that has been investing more. It is also processing fish in the islands, and that has impressed the region's most dynamic tuna body.
China is the only one that's really investing in the region. They've got investments across Micronesia. They've got, they're looking at investing in PNG. They've got the largest, in the longline fishery, they're the largest single player in the longline fishery in Fiji. They've got a processing plant in Marshall Islands. And so China is putting its money where its mouth is in terms of investment in the region.
The Chinese Vice Minister also suggested that the Chinese way of spending on infrastructure might be more effective aid than what other countries are doing. America is certainly getting engaged. At another function in Rarotonga on security partnerships, the US military's Pacific commander said this was his first Pacific Islands Forum too.
Not commonplace for a combatant commander to appear with a Secretary of State as we approach issues. But it's important as we look at this region, as Secretary Clinton has described, as the 3 Ds of defense, diplomacy, and development.
Now, I know there are those who see America's renewed engagement over the last 3.5 years in the Pacific perhaps as a hedge against particular countries. But the fact is, as I said this morning, The United States welcomes cooperation with a number of partners, including Japan, the European Union, China, and others. The Pacific is big enough for all of us.
She announced the expansion of a fisheries surveillance program that has been conducted until now only by the US Coast Guard.
Since just 2009, for example, this program has helped Kiribati net more than $4 million in fines for illegal fishing. Now we're working to expand our ship rider partnerships to include the United States Navy in addition to the United States Coast Guard. This will allow countries to take advantage of U.S. Navy ships that are already in the region or are transiting through the region to get help enforcing their own laws.
Both China and the United States say they are not in competition for influence in the Pacific, but the leaders of the Pacific nations are lapping up the increased attention.